Informed observers connected to politics or the military, myself included, have noted that the Trump campaign is swift-boating Tim Walz. Attacks on JD Vance's service are also offensive. JD Vance served honorably in Iraq, a combat zone where anything can happen and frequently does. As he said in his book, he was, quote, lucky to escape any real fighting. That doesn't make his service less than. Lucky, he says. And luck is often what makes the difference in a combat zone or even a training mission. That today is not your day. In a country where so few shoulder the burden, military service should not be a liability. It should be an asset. And despite our recent years as a country at war, many service members haven't seen combat. That doesn't make them or their service less admirable or less necessary. Nor does retiring from the National Guard after 24 years. These kinds of attacks from the left or the right diminish the service of so many others who have served honorably, who sacrificed time away from family, who put themselves in harm's way. Because the military is made largely of JD Vance's and Tim Walz's. There are 2 veterans on these presidential tickets, 2 enlisted veterans at that. They have unique insight into what America's men and women in the armed forces and their families have been through and need. And shouldn't that be the focus? This is a presidential race for commander-in-chief. And so often that candidate or their running mate has never personally served, even as they vie to make decisions about sending people into dangerous situations.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I gotta tell you guys, after a couple weeks of the mainstream liberal media talking about how Republican attacks against Kamala Harris are not effective, I think we have found our line of attack that actually is penetrating through the shield that the mainstream liberal media is trying to provide for Kamala Harris in order to try to affect the outcome of the 2024 election in her favor, okay? I just did a video about the liberal media now having conversations about potentially covering Kamala Harris the way that they should, actually doing their jobs, because the Trump campaign is calling them out for refusing to demand interviews with Kamala Harris while she duck and runs from the media and never answers any questions about what she actually believes. Okay, that line of attack is very effective. Okay, they're still talking about it and they will keep talking about it until Kamala Harris falls. Okay, this is great what's going on right now, right? I believe that we're at the beginning of turning this thing around, okay, in regards to the momentum. The second line of attack has to do with Tim Walz and his military record, okay? Because the Kamala campaign was asked about this. And of course, she's not really answering any questions because she can't defend it. She cannot defend the accusations of stolen valor against Tim Walz.
What else? Can you comment on some of his other criticisms? He made a whole litany of them today. Some of them are about your...
I was too busy talking to voters. I didn't hear them.
Some of the criticism has been about your vice presidential pick and his leaving the National Guard at 24 years. Vance said that he deserted his own troops or his own colleagues. What's your take on that?
Listen, I praise anyone who has presented themselves to serve our country. And I think that we all should.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, no explanation, no defense, except they've already changed some of Tim Walz's information on Kamala Harris's website, okay, because, again, he was running with this title that he didn't actually earn in the military, and a lot of people are upset, right? But, hey, you know, for the most part, in today's political environment, unfortunately, Kamala Harris or Tim Walz, they don't have to really defend themselves because they're going to have the mainstream liberal media try to defend them instead, okay? Except the mainstream liberal media, even they can't really defend this, okay? And this is why they're trying to low-key attack JD Vance, who brought this up at a press conference in which he was basically spinning the block on Kamala Harris, pulling up on Air Force Two as she landed like a dog, okay? JD Vance out here doing the Lord's work. Yeah, he called out Tim Walz as a veteran himself, and the mainstream media has basically been having a full-blown freak out since then. They've been covering this story nonstop. And you have one CNN anchor, Brianna Keilar, who's getting a whole lot of backlash because she low-key tried to take a shot at JD Vance's military service, because she's trying to say that, well, he shouldn't be able to talk because he hasn't been in combat either.
One of the things I think is At what point did military service become a liability? You know, that's one of the things that's sort of on my mind as I look at this. I also think that JD Vance as a messenger on this may be an imperfect messenger, because we have, as you introduced him, as a combat correspondent, which was what his title was. But when you dig a little deeper into that, he was a public affairs specialist, someone who did not see combat, which certainly the title combat correspondent kind of gives you a different impression.
Right? They're trying to make this about whether or not people are looking down on Tim Walz because he didn't serve in combat, and that's not what people are actually saying, okay? People's issues is the fact that he claimed to be in combat, or he strongly insinuated that he was in combat, even though he wasn't. And he's also claiming a rank that he didn't fully achieve. So with that being said, they've been bringing on military veterans to talk about this issue, including low testosterone white male Adam Kinzinger, who, like Van Jones and Bakari Sellers, is also one of these crime people that go on CNN. Again, I'm trying to wonder, is that a requirement to actually go on CNN as a man, right? You have to have low testosterone. I'm not entirely sure. It seems as if that's a requirement. Okay, haven't seen too many strong men on CNN, but amid this backlash that she's getting, she brought on Adam Kinzinger to try to make herself feel better about her comments about JD Vance.
When you had a right to retire.
Let me ask you about this, because Seth Moulton has taken aim at JD Vance, saying he didn't see combat, which is something JD Vance said. He didn't see any real fighting. He said that in his book, Hillbilly Elegy. I had said I wondered if JD Vance was an imperfect messenger for this because of that, not to question his service, because he served honorably and he served in the combat zone. But I wonder what you think about getting into that debate where now you have service members questioning how dangerous each other's service was, when the fact is so many service members, they are not seeing combat, or they may not be in a combat zone. What does that mean?
Yeah, look, being in a combat zone or not does not make your service any more or less honorable. This reminds me of that scene in the movie Civil War that just came out, where the dude's standing there and he's like, what kind of American are you? It's like, what kind of veteran are you? Are we going to really start doing that, pointing fingers at each other and saying, you didn't get deployed, you got attacked by mortars, you didn't get attacked by mortars? Look, JD Vance should not be attacking somebody's military service that served honorably. If Tim Walz had been dishonorably discharged from the military, fair point. That's everything you can go after on that. But it was an honorable discharge. He served honorably. JD Vance served honorably. It would be much better if, instead of trying to score cheap political points, they just acknowledged each other's service and moved on. And maybe we'd encourage, Brianna, more veterans to actually get involved in politics, which we need. Instead, now people are going to say, I've done what 99% of the rest of the country didn't do, but I don't want to run for office because maybe one time I said something inaccurate about my service, intentionally or unintentionally, and now they're going to use that and hang that around my neck by the 99% of people who never served. Donald Trump avoided the draft, claiming he had bone spurs. Nobody on his ticket, and especially him, have any right to attack anybody's service to the United States of America when he was unwilling to even lift a finger when his country needed him. He abandoned his country. Donald Trump fled the draft when his country needed him. He and JD Vance, who was his number 2, have no right to go after anybody when the number 1 on the ticket was too scared to serve in Vietnam and fake medical condition.
Anything in that, Scott?
Well, Adam was obviously a surrogate for President Biden before he dropped out of the race. I've always wondered, people who've attacked Donald Trump for getting out of his military service have explained Joe Biden getting out of his. I mean, he didn't really exactly cover himself in glory on this.
That has
point
nothing. That's insane.
No, it's not. It's
That
not
doesn't
insane.
make
You're attacking Trump for getting out of military service. Joe Biden somehow got out of military. I'm just wondering how you square your support for Biden, but yet you attack Trump on this point.
Yeah, okay, good one, Scott. I mean, Donald Trump is making
you have
clear
no answer. You have no
his
answer.
own personal Vietnam. No, I mean, you can sit there and giggle and laugh like a screwy guy, but like Donald Trump said his personal Vietnam was getting STDs.
Look, if you want to attack
he said
Donald,
he had bone spurs. It's insane.
If you want to attack Trump for getting out of military service, I think you ought to answer questions about how Joe Biden got out of it, and you supported
Scott,
Biden.
I agree with you. But listen, Joe Biden is not attacking JD Vance or anybody else's military service. Donald Trump and his number two are attacking Tim Walz, who served 24 years when he didn't even bother to go to the draft.
And one Marine veteran, one major, she confronted Brianna Keilar about trying to low-key take shots at JD Vance in his military service in defense of the stolen ballot accusations against Tim Walz. Take a look.
What do you think of JD Vance's attacks on Tim Walz? The biggest one seeming to be that he bailed on a deployment to Iraq and abandoned his men in the Minnesota National Guard in doing so, even though the evidence does not appear to support that.
Well, and as you pointed out, I don't know Tim Walz personally, so I can't speak specifically to his service record. I can go by, reports. I know you had a friend of mine as well, Dan Lamoth, on recently, and so I was listening to his reporting. So based on reporting, and at the end of the day, here's what I say, and I say this across the board: service is service. If you raised your hand to volunteer to serve your country in whatever capacity, enlisted, officer, reserve, active, 4 years, 24 years, wherever you were stationed, if you answered that call and did it honorably, that's enough. I want every veteran, and these two veterans as well, to stand on their record. Now, that being said, one of my jobs in the Marine Corps was also doing service verifications, often for people running for offices or in offices. And I would say just make sure that you stand on your record, whatever that is. And I've told JD that, I would be the very first one if I thought he was even doing a little bit of embellishment or exaggeration, and he is not. I would be the first one to tell him, and then I'd be happy to tell you that as well. So I would sort of encourage the other side to do the same thing.
Yeah, Sean, let me ask you about that, because Tim Walz has said that he carried weapons of war into war. He did not. What do you think about that? What do you think he needs to do about that?
Well, I would tell any veteran, and I did. I have in the past. I've said, if there's something that you need to correct that record, because it does matter to the veteran audience. A small misstatement, if that's the case here, which reporting indicates it is, then just correct the record, and that would carry so much weight for the veteran community. It's something small in words, but big in communication, right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, I don't know him. I know what his record has reported to be. I can speak more confidently on JD's. And I've also seen the criticism. Just going to point out that I saw yesterday where you talked about combat correspondent. And that's important to me as well. And that's not just about JD Vance. That's about all of my Marines, but not just Marines. All combat correspondents, public affairs Marines, combat camera Marines, graphic artists, all of those Marines and other service members whose job it is to go where the action is, wherever that is, and to tell the story. And those people, there's a hall in our public affairs school called Defense Information School of 130 heroes that served in that capacity who did not make it out of a combat zone. So that's important to me as well. That's why I'm here today, to represent my Marine, JD Vance, represent his service, probably try to send a message to all veterans: stand on your record, it's enough, but also defend those of us whose job it is to tell that Marine Corps story and to go wherever that story is.
And I'm really glad that you make that distinction, Major, because these are combat zones. These are dangerous places for everyone who is serving in them. Major Sean Haney, thank you so much for speaking with us. We really appreciate it.
And I've also seen the criticism. Just going to point out that I saw yesterday where you talked about combat correspondent. And that's important to me as well. And that's not just about JD Vance. That's about all of my Marines, but not just Marines. All combat correspondents, public affairs Marines, combat camera Marines, graphic artists, all of those Marines and other service members whose job it is to go where the action is, wherever that is, and to tell the story. And those people, there's a hall in our public affairs school called Defense Information School of 130 heroes that served in that capacity who did not make it out of a combat zone. So that's important to me as well. That's why I'm here today, to represent my Marine, JD Vance, represent his service, probably try to send a message to all veterans, stand on your record, it's enough, but also defend those of us whose job it is to tell that Marine Corps story and to go wherever that story is.
Yeah, so you know what's so hilarious about this to me, guys? Right? It's the fact that the mainstream liberal media is doing the same thing over and over and over again to defend Democrats when Republicans attack them on the only thing that Democrats are running on, because they're not running on policy. They're running on identity, okay? So in Kamala Harris's case, she's running on this idea that, hey, I'm allegedly black and I'm allegedly a woman. Therefore, you should vote for me because I'm a black woman. Republicans say, well, I think that you are DEI. I think that you got the job because Joe Biden wanted to put a black woman on the ticket. And Joe Biden had said this himself, like he stated this multiple times. I put Kamala Harris on the ticket because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, he's admitted this. And then the liberal media says, oh, no, you can't say that, please. You can't attack her like that. That's out of bounds, right? Trump gets asked about this. And Trump says, well, I didn't know Kamala Harris was black. Right? I thought that she was an Indian until all of a sudden she turned black when she decided to run for president. The media boo, whine, and cry. Oh, no, Trump can't do that. He can't question Kamala Harris's blackness. Even though, in my opinion, there is no proof or evidence that Kamala Harris is actually black. There's a lot more proof that Kamala Harris is Irish, Indian, everything except black, right? I'm not entirely sure where people are getting the black thing from, but again, allegedly she's black, and you know, she's allowed to run on this. This is the only thing that she's running on, and you can't question it, right? You can't question it. Even though the Democrats, the only thing they're running on is identity. When it comes to Tim Walz, okay, what is Tim Walz running on? Well, I was a veteran. I was a coach, right? I was all these things, right? I mean, this is just, again, identity politics, okay? When you say, well, I was a veteran, and then you try to say, well, because I was a veteran, you should vote for me because I was in the battlefield, right? This guy said he had a rank that he actually really didn't fully earn. And he also, again, strongly implied that he had fought in war, okay? That he actually was in a combat zone and he was not. He used this as justification and to legitimize his voice and opinion in his policy proposals to essentially take away people's Second Amendment rights. When you're doing that, I think it's fair game to say, hey, Tim, you didn't really serve in the capacity that you're claiming that you served in, right? I mean, you are embellishing some of your record. And what does the mainstream liberal media do? Oh, no, you can't do that. That's not fair. You shouldn't question the service of a veteran. And it's like, well, nobody's questioning whether or not he actually served. Nobody is trying to criticize Tim Walz for serving. Everybody is thankful for his service. But what people are criticizing is the capacity in which he served, not to diminish his service because he did not serve in combat, but to question why is it that he is strongly trying to insinuate, or just in some cases, again, flat out saying that, yeah, I served in a combat zone. He served in a capacity that he did not serve in. Again, it's amazing how that works, right? The Democrats, all they run on is identity, but yet you can't criticize it even when there are legitimate questions about the identity that the Democrats are claiming. Again, this is the only thing they're running based off of, right? And again, this is exactly what I was telling you guys about the media trying to handicap Republicans, right? They want to literally take away the Republicans and their ability to attack Democrats when we know if the shoe was on the other foot, right? If Trump had a vice presidential pick that is being accused of stolen valor, credibly, right? With evidence, video evidence, okay? This is what we have with Tim Walz. We all know that mainstream media, it would be fair game, right? They would destroy Trump's VP if Trump had a VP that was facing those types of allegations, right? That's the only thing they'd be talking about. They'd be talking about it until they force Trump to pick another guy. They would bury his campaign with that. We know they would. But see, when it's a Democrat, though, all of a sudden, no, you can't do that, right? Don't do that. Please stop, right? That's out of bounds. You can't do it. It's like, no. This is a veterans conversation, right? And I think that it is actually wrong to tell veterans that they can't criticize other veterans that are trying to claim that they served in ways that they did not serve. Okay? Because again, nobody's criticizing Tim Walz for serving. Okay? Nobody's doing that. They're saying, listen, you are basically trying to build a political career saying that you did something in the military that you didn't do. And you have people that have actually fought and died in the military doing the things that you said that you did, even though you didn't do them. Okay? And in the minds of these veterans who actually did fight, who actually did face gunfire, who almost lost their lives, in some cases lost their limbs, paralyzed, permanently damaged their bodies, that's disrespectful. So again, what CNN is basically trying to do is that they're trying to tell veterans, no, you can't have that conversation, right? You can't do that, okay? You can't feel disrespected by this guy claiming to have done something that he didn't do in the military. Again, it's amazing, absolutely amazing how much they will go out of the way to try to defend Democrats. And when they can't defend Democrats, they try to shut off the whole conversation by saying, well, it's not fair. It's not fair to talk about it. This is them waving a white flag, bro. They're waving a white flag. When they say, oh, no, you can't talk about it anymore. That is them saying, you got us, right? That's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. So again, I find this to be fascinating, how they do the same thing over and over and over again when they don't have a real defense. They just try to shut off the conversation as a whole and try to guilt you and try to make you feel bad for bringing up the fact that, hey, Democrats are embellishing, or there are questions about their identities, which again, that's the only thing that they're running their whole campaign based off of. It's really fascinating stuff. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.